welcome to the Festival of Storytellers.
I can't tell you how excited I am to be on right now. It's been a couple of weeks of excitement, getting prepared, and I've done a lot of things in my life, but this has got to be close to the top.
Thank you, Reader's Magnet, and thank you, John, for putting this forth and taking the chance on us authors in presenting this out to the world.
I've enjoyed this immensely, Joanne.
Ellie, so have I. Thank you for who you are, and thank you, Reader's Magnet. You all are beautiful, and you've worked so very hard, and we are blessed.
We are.
I thank everybody that's involved with this process, because we know writers need readers and writers need publishers. We thank Reader's Magnet and everybody that's involved. I love Reader's Magnet. They say, we share your stories with the world.
Well, hello there. My name is Robert Grappel, and I want to thank Reader's Magnet for giving me this opportunity to speak to you. Here's what we're talking about. Let's see if we can get it in front of the camera. My book is called Kintsugi, and it's a collection of poems that have been written on a whole variety of topics. I guess first thing, let me try to tell you a little bit about myself. I have graduate degrees in physics and computer science. And you may wonder, like, how in the world does that end up making me a poet? Well, the short answer is when I was going to undergraduate school, they insisted all of us science nerds had to take freshman English. I was bound and determined that there was no way I was going to take freshman English, waste a semester on that. There were much more interesting things to do. So the university had a deal. You could take any course you wanted as long as the professor would sign off on it. So I found a graduate level poetry writing course, and the professor said, well, okay, it's your funeral. Do you have any experience? No. Have you ever, done any serious poetry writing? No. Well, yeah, good luck. And I probably worked harder in that course than in any other. Got my probably gentleman's B, but it did plant the seed, and I'm now, Kintsugi is my third book. Another interesting thing is the professor was Donald Hall, who, if you're followers of poetry, you may know that name. But if you go into a bookstore, poetry is shelved alphabetically by author. So there I am right next to Donald Hall. And if you only knew. Anyway, the book itself, the title of Kintsugi refers to a Japanese art form. So you can sort of see that. Where you take broken pottery and glue it together with gold and silver lacquers to make something that is even more worthy of and more valuable than the original ceramic. And I was sort of thinking that our world is now so heavily divided. We've got political parties and racial divides and social divides and religious divides. And what I sort of felt was what we're called to do is to be the lacquer, the gold and silver lacquer that puts the pieces back together again. So let's see. Anyway, here's the poem. That's the title of this. I am a flawed vessel. Cracks show through the armor that I show to the world. Chips and dents, gouges and scrapes from my 70 years of living. Some parts of me show signs of wear, and some parts have been replaced. We live in a broken world, its surface fractured by real and artificial divisions. Hundreds of national and personal boundaries scar its surface and burrow deep. Some borders are natural, shining rivers and wave-washed coastlines, visible from high above. Some borders are crater-marred war zones, retaining the memories of hurts and vengeances from long ago. While some barbed wire-edged borders mark minefields, killing zones of no man's lands, as current as this evening's news report. This poem, like its author, is imperfect. It doesn't rhyme. The rhythm of its words does not always flow as smoothly as I'd like. Not like the air and water flowing across the eroding edges of our unnecessary separations. We are called to be the gold and silver dust in the lacquer that binds the broken parts together, remaking this pile of shattered pieces into a world of utmost beauty. So, let's see, well, here is another one. My poems, well, I never sit down to actually write a poem. I can't do that. If so said, you got an hour to write a poem, well, good luck. They come when they come out of that place in the world where inspiration comes. And so basically the trick is to be ready to receive it and get it written down. So like this one was written on the edge of a tourist map. It was we were touring the Little Bighorn battlefield in Wyoming, the site of Custer's last stand. It was the year 1868. The U.S. government signed the Fort Laramie Treaty, and the Black Hills were to be closed to white settlements, preserved for the Lakota Indians, forever, so long as the buffalo roamed. Forever lasted less than 8 years. The Eastern railroads needed meat for their track crews, so the professional hunters followed the rails westward. Men like Buffalo Bill made their living killing the buffalo for meat, hides, and sport. It was the year 1872, and America celebrated its centennial, and gold was discovered in the Black Hills. People in their thousands rushed to the west, seeking fortunes and living space. Most of them were immigrants to America, fleeing depression and prejudice, and ready to ignore the letter of the law. Towns quickly sprung up along the immigrant trails, towns like Deadwood, an illegal encampment in the midst of the Indian land, and people like Calamity Jane, an illegal immigrant, and Wild Bill Hickok, another illegal immigrant. In the year 1876, the U.S. government sent the army to remove the Indians from their land. Almost half of Custer's troops were immigrants themselves, from 17 different countries, and 2 marked down only as unknown. Well, you know the basic story. The Lakota won the battle, but lost the war at their sacred Black Hills. General Custer became a legend. The Indian culture was civilized, and U.S. history moved on. History is full of ironies. Custer, a hero for the North Side, winning battles against slavery in the Civil War, won even greater fame by dying in a war to enslave the Lakota. And what's the lesson we should learn from all this? Each of us standing here today is an illegal immigrant. We need to remember. Oh, someone's asking me what's my favorite poem in this book. It's like asking what's your favorite child. It's hard to know. Well, here's one that I've read a number of times. I'm Jewish, and during the Jewish high holidays, we recite a prayer about we're atoning for the sins not only of our own but of anyone in our congregation. Well, God, it's been another year, and I'm still here. Thank you. My soul is really tired, though. My spirit dull and lifeless. My heart is empty and uninspired, in need of resuscitation. Then comes a knock on the door, a wake-up call a shock of awakening, a cry of alarm. I'm alive again, God. Thank you for the spark. Thank you for the new beginning. Thank you for my life. Let's see, and there's one other. This one was written and inspired by the COVID pandemic. It's called Utapils, which is a Norwegian term for celebrating the end of winter by basically getting drunk. It's been a long, cold winter, a year of social distancing, each of us huddled behind our walls, pierced only by the light of computer screens and dear voices over telephones. It's been a long, cold winter, a year without gatherings, each of us hearing only our own music and celebrating virtual rites and quiet loneliness inside our own souls. It's been a long, cold winter, but we sense that spring is coming as we receive our vaccinations to boost our personal immunities and warm our souls. It's been a long, cold winter, but now the sun is rising. The days are growing longer, joy is becoming easier to find. Summer is nearing. It's been a long, cold winter, but even a frozen river thaws in time. We will share new times together. We'll play new songs in harmonious chorus, and we'll smile again. So let us praise the ending of a long, cold winter. Let us raise a glass to the greening of spring. Let us drink a health to the rebirth of life and the start of a new season with song and story. It was a long, cold winter. Thank you, folks. I'm getting. And then, my head goes in a lot of weird directions. And this one is actually a sort of my pondering of the book of Leviticus in the Bible. And if you read it, and it's got a lot of what seems like, well, not to be sacrilegious, but nonsense, or things that certainly don't seem to make sense for someone at this time. Here's my attempt to make sense of it. The sabbatical year. We're to let all farmland rest every 7th year. Okay, so crop rotation is a good thing. Nature needs recovery time just like people do. But I'm not a farmer. I get my food from a store and eat at restaurants. So what does this sabbatical year have to do with me? Maybe we're to treat the land as our partners in creation. Good things are not just the result of our own labor. So like our farmlands and ourselves, nature deserves this time of rest. A Sabbath to remind us of the world around and what remains yet to be done for the poor and hungry tomorrow. And the Jubilee year. Every 50th year, all the slaves shall go free. But I don't own any slaves. Slavery ended a long time ago. So what's this Jubilee got to do with me? Well, many people today live under crushing debts, unable to live free and be all they could be. They might as well be slaves. Poverty can be a form of enslavement, generation after generation, longing for the standard of life that I can take for granted. Every 50th year, all land reverts to its original owner. Wealth should not separate people into layers. Haves and have-nots should not be a permanent condition. Once a generation, every 50 years or so, we should all get out of jail free card. And thou shalt make no idols. Well, chapter 26 switches gears with a wrench. After pages of rules for farming, ownership of land, and slavery, we're told not to make idols, graven images, or pillars in the land. Well, money can be an idol, and it becomes an end rather than simply a tool. A graven image could be a pile of dead presidents, or an art collection. A pillar in the land might be an oversized mansion, or a wall to keep people out. So this stuff is important for me too, even if I'm not a farmer or a real estate developer. Important enough to be told from a mountaintop and remembered by all the people. The opposite of poverty is not wealth, it's justice. Okay, another one. I'm just picking them not entirely at random, but here's one that was based on an old vaudeville joke. And I've sort of turned it into something a little different. It was the time of pandemic, and a man of fervent faith was quarantined at home. Each night he prayed to God, please keep my family safe and healthy. Next day, God had the state governor give a speech. There were health officials and the local football coach, each telling the man to wash his hands, to avoid large social gatherings, where to obtain disinfecting supplies, and other basic precautions. These things will help keep you safe and healthy, said the governor. And the man shouted back at his TV, God will protect me and my family, and he prayed again. The next day, the mayor shut down the city. She gave a press conference, echoing the advice of the health officials and the state governor. All day long, the news broadcast advice and precautions to take, how to avoid the spread of the virus, why social distancing was important. Again, that night, the man prayed. Next morning, the man watched news reports with scientists giving the same advice. And there was a special report from the president describing his plan to distribute vaccines. I'll answer your question, Bob, in a moment. It was the weekend now. Still, the man said, I'm praying to God, and he's going to save me and my family. I have faith. The man took his entire family to church on Sunday morning. They had a fine meal at their favorite restaurant. On the radio, they heard public officials urging everyone to stay home. Their preacher told them that God would keep them safe if they would only trust in the Lord. They all felt very good. It's just like the flu, he said, and God will take care of us. And a couple of days passed, the man began feeling ill. He was diagnosed with COVID-19, sickened, and died. He went to heaven and got his chance to discuss the situation with God. The man exclaimed, I had faith in you, but you didn't save me. You let me die, and I don't understand why. And God replied, I sent you a president, a governor, a mayor, doctors, nurses, health officials, radio and television personalities, even friends on Facebook. What more did you expect, and what else did you want? The man then asked, well, who are these people behind me? God replied, those are the other people who died because you disregarded the advice I sent you. I'm trying to answer, do I have a process in coming up with topics to focus on? Actually, no way in the world do I have any kind of process. So these poems just sort of, come to me like, as an example, here's one from the book. We were talking on a trip about you've probably heard of WD-40. It's a spray lubricant. And most of us who, have to fix something have one in our toolbox. Well, anyway, it turns out that the development of WD-40 was kind of interesting. And so here's a poem about it. It was 1958 in the heat of the Cold War, and the U.S. Air Force needed a protective coating for its new Atlas ballistic missile. A rocket so flimsy it had to be kept inflated, lest it collapse in a ball of flame on the launch pad, or when the world would collapse in a sea of fire soon after its launching. 3 men from South Dakota took on the challenge. They developed a formula. It failed. They tried again with renewed hope. It failed. 39 times they tried and failed, but the 40th formula worked, and the threat of the Atlas missile kept the peace for over a decade. They called it Water Dispersant Formula 40. It could have meant weapon of destruction, but no matter. The Atlas missile was never fired in anger. It launched Mercury astronauts into space instead. Well, we haven't beaten our swords into plowshares or our spears into pruning hooks, but we did transform a piece of atomic warfare technology into the universal lubricant, able to fix a rusty hinge and silence a squeaky door. Not bad for the first try. Let's see. Fortunately, I have bookmarks. Here's one that actually comes from a math problem. You ask where inspiration comes from. It can be weird. I did teach math and science for a while. The poem is called 17 Camels. There once was an old man who had 17 camels. and he also had 3 sons. His time was growing short, so the old man drew up his will. I leave half of my herd to my eldest son, whom I love. I leave then a third of my herd to my second son, whom I also love. But to my youngest son, who was always a scoundrel, I leave 1/9 of my herd. The sons fell to arguing, and their fighting was intense. They could not obey their father's will. 17 camels won't divide evenly by 2, or by 3, or by 9. So how could they honor their dear father's wishes? The 3 sons went to see a wise old woman in their village, and she thought about their problem for a long while. He said, I don't know if I can help you, but if you want, you can have my camel too. The eldest son took 9 camels, half of the herd of 18, and departed. The second son took 6 camels, 1/3 of the herd, and departed. The youngest son saw that 3 camels were left, but I'm only entitled to 1/9 of my father's herd, 2 camels. The youngest son recognized the wisdom of the old woman. He returned her camel to her and departed the village in peace. If you have some time to see anything about how that little math problem worked. Okay, here's one. A lot of this book was written during the political ferment of the last 4 years of elections. This is called Political Discourse. I already know everything worth knowing. And if you agree, I hear you. But if you don't agree, then you're part of a great conspiracy, or deluded, or both. Sometimes it's just so funny listening to your mistaken ideas. They make for such great jokes, I'm falling down laughing. But you know that when we get up again smiling at the joke, at each other's alien thought patterns, it just might be the beginning of a conversation. Or, here's one from early in my youth. When I was a boy, I had a coin collection, each one a prime example of its type, worth well beyond the face value. Their small differences and minor flaws, raising them in the eye of the collector. In the beginning, God engraved a die with his image and stamped out Adam and Eve, the first proof set. And thousands of generations later, we're still made from that same mold. We each have the same face value, one human being. But the great collector values us for our flaws and our differences. Okay. Jumping around here. My wife and I are semi-professional musicians. We perform and so, and in fact, it's kind of weird sitting here looking at myself reading, and I can't see my audience. I hope you're enjoying it. Anyway, this is a poem about a musical term called heterophony, which is a kind of texture where you have a single melody line, but lots of people doing it. Well, thank you, Blaze. That's what I feel I'm trying to do. All humanity sings the same song, from start to finish, from our birth to our death, from the key signature to the double bar. Some sing faster with lots of vigor, swinging the beat and changing the volume, while others sing their song a slower tempo, with, perhaps, fewer repeats. Some add personal variations to the tune, with melodic adornments, while others sing the melody plain and simple, no extra notes or deviations. There are local versions for each tune. Sometimes a minor chord intrudes. Sometimes there's a syncopation, a hold, a note cut short, or an extra rest. The song we're singing is simply life, one basic tune and infinite variation. Each person makes the tune their own, so sing yours sweetly. Let's see. Okay, here's a good one. Here's one based on some philosophy, I guess, called Finding Happiness. A teacher once gave each of his students a balloon. And he said, blow up your balloon, write your name on it, and throw it out in the hallway. The teacher then mixed up all the balloons and said, you now have 5 minutes to find your own balloon. A frantic search ensued, but no student could find their balloon. The teacher then said, well, why don't you try this approach instead? Take the first balloon you can find in the hallway, read the name written on it, and hand it back to that person. Within 5 minutes, every student had their own balloon. Well, these balloons are kind of like happiness. If you only look for your own, you might never find it. But if you look for the happiness of others, you'll find yours as well. I should do a podcast, huh? I will think about it. Thank you for the suggestion. Okay, here, talking about the ones I do that are political. Here's a pretty heavy-duty one. This is about gun control. Right? This was written just after the shooting of 17 students at Parkland, Florida. You have a gun. That makes me feel afraid. But now I have a gun, and it's twice as likely that someone will get shot. You tell me that I should feel more comfortable now, but I just don't see the logic. You don't have a gun, and I don't have a gun, and there's no chance at all that someone will be shot. This logic I can understand. I should point out that most of these poems are illustrated. There's poems that were done by a number of people. Ivan Stiles, who's a musician mentor of mine, and also by Christiana Welmsley, who's actually the daughter of my wife's acupuncturist. Here's one. It's not political, but it's about, I was taking a workshop on instruments that I play. And when does a groove become a rut? I'm lazy and crazy, but I do enjoy safety. But somehow lately, feel that just maybe that groove isn't quite wide enough. Okay, this one actually came from something I read on the internet. An old African proverb relates that when an old man dies, a library burns down. Well, this poet is an old man. History section. First-hand memories of events and times, recollections of the past, and dreams left for others. Sociology section. Stories of friends and family, lives shared and touched, and regrets of opportunities missed. Travel section. Photo albums and videos, tours taken at sites seen, and items left on the bucket list. The science section. Experiments tried and failed, some successes, a few near misses, and many enigmas left to explore. And the biography section. One fewer volume on the shelves. Okay, you want to do politics? Here's a political one, so I guess have a couple minutes. It's called A Modern Bill of Rights. 1. I have the right to be ignorant. In a world where knowledge is readily available, free, and at my fingertips day and night, more than at any other time in history, I can just choose to ignore it all. 2. I have the right to disseminate my ignorance. I don't have to check my facts. I don't need to think critically about my deductions. I can broadcast my raw lack of information to anyone who might care to listen. 3. I have the right to be stubborn. When the world does not adhere to my beliefs and events do not evolve according to my wishes, I can simply choose to ignore any evidence I don't like. 4. I have the right to demand equality for my uneducated ideas. What I read on my favorite internet site should stand side by side with the views of lifelong experts. I don't need to learn anything new or consider any opposing views. And 5. I have the right to hold tightly to my prejudices, my country, right or wrong. My group is entitled to the best of everything. When I help another, it lessens me. Charity is a sign of weakness. And I'm fortunate to live where I have these rights. I'm also fortunate enough not to express them. I have the opportunity to learn and grow, and that is my most important right. I guess you know where my politics are from that. Time's up. thank you for listening to my carrying on for the last half hour. Do we still have time? Okay, I'll keep reading if you'll. Another political one. I have a magic wand, and if you will vote for me, I promise that on the day of my inauguration, I will wave my wand, and every person in our country will be exactly equal. The same bank balance, the same debts. Each job will pay the same, and all will owe the same taxes. Weeks and months pass, and some will suffer accidents, financial reverses, poor choices. Some will be luckier, and some will work harder. Some strive to a better life for all, while others yield to gratification of self and squander what the equality has given them. So in 4 years of time, I must wave my wand again. I must restore the balance and even the score. Yet again, some will surge ahead and others fall behind. By luck or accident, talent or laziness, chances or greater effort. And again, the people will call for me. Forget about elections. Just keep waving your wand. I'll cease to be called president, and I'll become your dictator as you yield up your freedoms for stability. That's the problem with most isms. They're never stable. They start out wonderfully, then dissolve back into chaos to which they sprang. The elite and the poor are always with us. They just change names. We long for conflicting goals. We want stability, predictability, but we cannot tolerate stagnation. We want freedom, room to grow, expand, create, improve, while recognizing our fear of newness and the unknown future. We seek peace and an end to war, but we want to keep all that we have, and what you have looks nice too. And you might not want to let me have it if I just ask you nicely. Unfortunately, there are no magical wands. No one can promise both ends from our set of desirable choices. We must juggle our desires to achieve an equitable balance, and it's the best anyone can do. Thank you, folks, for your time. And you buy the book, and encourage. I probably will have another one out in a year or two. Thank you, folks.